Victoria Sterling balanced, her phone between her shoulder and ear while reviewing seating charts for the upcoming charity gala. It's Manhattan's most sought-after event coordinator. She thrived on the chaos of managing multiple high-profile events simultaneously. The morning sun streamed through her office windows, casting golden light across the scattered papers and fabric samples that covered every surface. "No, Mrs. Henderson, the orchids need to be white, not cream," Victoria explained patiently too. Her client, trust me. Against the navy tablecloths, white will be stunning. Her assistant knocked and entered, carrying a thick envelope with the Cross Industries logo embossed in silver. Victoria's stomach tightened slightly. Damien Cross was her most demanding client, known for his perfectionist tendencies and complete lack of patience for anything less than flawless execution. After ending her call, Victoria tore open the envelope, expecting revised catering requests or last-minute venue changes. Instead, she found herself staring at legal documents titled Surrogacy Agreement and Co-Parenting Contract. Her coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. The confrontation, 20 minutes later, Victoria stormed through the marble lobby of Cross Tower, her heels clicking authoritatively against the polished stone. The receptionist tried to intercept her, but Victoria was already stepping into the private elevator that led directly to Damien's penthouse office. The doors opened to reveal a space that perfectly reflected its owner, sleek, minimalist, and intimidatingly perfect. Floor 2's windows offered breathtaking views of Central Park. While modern art pieces hung strategically on stark white walls, Damien Cross stood with his back to her, speaking into his phone with the cold efficiency that had made him a tech industry legend at 34. Tall and lean with sharp features and dark hair that never seemed out of place, he commanded attention without trying. "Double the offer," he was saying. "I want those patents acquired by Friday," he turned as Victoria approached, ending his call. Without ceremony, his steel-gray eyes assessed her with the same analytical precision he applied to business deals. "Miss Sterling, I assume you received my proposal?" Victoria slammed the contract onto his pristine desk. "This isn't a proposal, Mr. Cross. This is completely insane." One perfectly groomed eyebrow arched slightly. "I assure you, my mental faculties are entirely sound. Then explain why you've sent me a contract asking me to have your baby like I'm some kind of business acquisition." Damien gestured toward the leather chairs facing his desk. "Please, sit. I'll explain the situation. I'll stand. Thanks." Victoria crossed her arms, her amber eyes flashing with indignation. The family legacy. Damien moved to his chair with fluid grace. "My grandmother is dying. The doctors have given her 3 months, possibly less." The blunt statement temporarily deflated Victoria's anger. "I'm sorry to hear that. Leonard Cross built this company from nothing after my grandfather died young. She sacrificed everything to create the Cross legacy." For a moment, something almost vulnerable flickered across his features. Her final wish is to know that legacy will continue through family, not just corporate succession. "And you can't find someone to date like a normal person?" "Dating is inefficient and unpredictable," Damien replied with complete seriousness. "I've observed your work for 2 years. You're intelligent, organized, and capable. Mention it. The Morrison wedding, that you've always wanted children, but haven't found the right partner?" Victoria's jaw dropped. "You were eavesdropping on my private conversation, standing 3 feet away, when you told Mrs. Morrison about your struggles with modern dating culture?" The contract offers $5 million, Damien continued, as if discussing a simple business transaction. "Full medical care, co-parenting rights, and educational provisions for the child." "I'm not having your baby for money," Victoria exclaimed, her voice echoing off the glass walls. "Then what would make this arrangement acceptable?" The question caught her completely off guard. "Nothing. This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Cross. You can't just manufacture a family. With modern reproductive technology and legal frameworks, that's not what I meant, and you know it." At that moment, the elevator chimed softly, and an elegant, elderly woman stepped into the office. Despite her frail appearance and reliance on a walking cane, Eleanor Cross carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, and her sharp blue eyes missed nothing. "The grandmother's wisdom, I thought I heard raised voices," Eleanor said, her gaze moving between them with keen interest. "You must be the famous Victoria Sterling." Damien speaks highly of your organizational abilities. Victoria recognized Eleanor from numerous charity events, though the society matriarch looked considerably thinner than she had at the Christmas gala 6 months ago. Mrs. Cross, Victoria acknowledged, struggling to regain her composure. I'm afraid your grandson and I are having a professional disagreement about my great-grandchild, I presume. Eleanor's eyes twinkled with mischief. Don't look so shocked, dear. Who do you think suggested you in the first place? Damien cleared his throat uncomfortably. Grandmother, perhaps this conversation should remain private. Nonsense, Damien. You're making a complete mess of this situation. Eleanor moved to a chair with careful dignity. Miss Sterling, my grandson has the emotional intelligence of a computer processor, highly efficient, but utterly lacking in human warmth. Victoria couldn't suppress a small smile at the accurate assessment. However, Eleanor continued, beneath all that calculated precision, he has tremendous potential. I'm not asking you to marry him immediately. Heaven knows he's not ready for that level of emotional commitment. I'm simply asking you to consider giving an old woman peace of mind. The unexpected alternative. This is absolutely crazy, Victoria muttered, more to herself than to them. Sleep on it, Eleanor suggested, rising with visible effort. Damien will take you to dinner tomorrow to discuss potential modifications to the arrangement. I haven't agreed to anything, Victoria protested. 7 o'clock at La Bernardine, Damien stated, as if the matter were already settled. I'll send a car. I can drive myself, Victoria retorted, gathering her purse. And just so we're clear, showing up for dinner doesn't mean I'm agreeing to this ridiculous proposal. As the elevator doors closed on Damien's stoic expression and Eleanor's knowing smile, Victoria leaned against the polished wall, her heart pounding. This couldn't be happening, yet the contract in her bag felt disturbingly real, as did the tiny, treacherous part of her mind that whispered dangerous possibilities. The dinner proposition the next evening found Victoria seated across from Damien, at one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. He had, predictably, ordered wine he remembered her mentioning at a previous event. Demonstrating his unsettling habit of cataloging personal details, I'm not signing your contract, Victoria stated firmly after they'd ordered. Damien nodded, unsurprised. My grandmother suggested you might have alternative terms. This isn't a negotiation. I'm not having your baby. Why did you come to dinner? It was a fair question. Victoria toyed with her napkin, considering her answer. Curiosity, maybe? I wanted to understand what kind of man thinks creating a human being is equivalent to a corporate merger. The fundamental principles aren't entirely different. Both require careful planning, resource allocation, and clear expectations. That, Victoria interrupted, is exactly why this is such a terrible idea. A child isn't a business venture, Damien. Children are messy and unpredictable and emotional. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. My emotional disposition is irrelevant. I would provide financially and ensure the child received every possible advantage. Children need more than advantages. They need warmth, spontaneity, laughter. The revelation my grandmother raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8, Damien said quietly. She was strict, demanding, and entirely focused on preparing me to inherit Cross Industries. I turned out reasonably well. Simple statement, delivered without self-pity, struck Victoria unexpectedly. For the first time, she glimpsed something beneath his polished exterior. A boy shaped by loss and expectation, molded into a man who valued control above connection. Tell me about your grandmother, Victoria said, changing tactics. Eleanor Cross is remarkable. When my grandfather died, everyone expected her to sell the small electronics company and disappear into widow's retirement. Instead, she expanded operations, identified emerging technologies, and built an empire through sheer determination and strategic thinking. She sounds incredible. She is. Genuine emotion colored his voice for the first time that evening. The doctors say she has perhaps 3 months remaining. Her final wish is simple: to know the Cross legacy will continue beyond corporate holdings. The compromised Victoria studied the man across from her, seeing past his intimidating exterior to something unexpectedly vulnerable. What if we tried a different approach? Damien raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Your grandmother wants to see you building a family before she passes away. What if we gave her that vision without the actual baby component? Elaborate? A fake relationship. We pretend to date, fall in love, get engaged. Give her the happiness of seeing you with someone special, planning a future together. It accomplishes your goal without creating an actual human being as part of a business arrangement. Damien considered this with his typical analytical approach. Deception. More like a compassionate illusion, Victoria countered. People do it constantly for elderly relatives who need comfort more than absolute truth. What would you require in exchange for this arrangement? Victoria had anticipated this question. Fund a community center in Brooklyn Heights. The neighborhood where I grew up desperately needs proper facilities for after-school programs, job training, and senior activities. How much? $2 million? Agreed. Damien replied immediately. Victoria blinked in surprise. Just like that? It's significantly less than I offered for surrogacy, and the social impact aligns with cross-industries charitable initiatives. Despite everything, Victoria found herself laughing at his matter-of-fact tone. Fine. But if we're going to fake date, you'll need to learn to behave like someone who actually likes me. Damien extended his hand across the table. Do we have an agreement, Miss Sterling? Looking at his outstretched hand, Victoria had the distinct feeling she was making either the best or worst decision of her life. Either way, there was no turning back. Deal, she said, shaking his hand firmly. But please, if we're going to pretend to be romantically involved, you should probably call me Victoria. Their hands remained connected slightly longer than necessary. Victoria could have sworn she saw the ghost of a genuine smile cross Damien's perfectly composed features. Victoria, he repeated, her name sounding surprisingly right in his precise voice. I believe this arrangement may prove more successful than either of us anticipates. Little did either of them realize just how prophetic those words would prove to be. 3 weeks into their carefully orchestrated charade, Victoria found herself standing in Eleanor Cross's elegant penthouse, receiving what could only be described as relationship coaching from one of Manhattan's most formidable socialites. No, absolutely not. Eleanor tapped her cane against the marble floor with disapproval. Damien, she's supposed to be your beloved girlfriend, not your business associate. Victoria bit her lip to suppress laughter as Damien's brow furrowed in confusion. They were practicing for their first public appearance together at the annual Cross Foundation Charity Gala. We're maintaining appropriate physical contact as outlined in our parameters, Damien pointed out logically. You're holding her hand. Like she might contaminate you? Eleanor retorted sharply. Relax your grip. Look at her as if she brings sunshine to your dreary existence, not as if she's submitted incorrect financial reports. It was day 21 of what Victoria privately called Operation Convince Eleanor, and the learning curve was proving steeper than Damien's meticulously detailed relationship manual had suggested. Perhaps a demonstration would help, Eleanor suggested with a mischievous glint in her eyes. Come here, Victoria dear. Victoria moved to Eleanor's side, trying not to glance at Damien, who looked increasingly uncomfortable with each passing moment. Romance isn't clinical, Eleanor explained, taking Victoria's hand gently. It's about connection. Notice how your eyes linger, she demonstrated with a twinkling gaze that made Victoria understand how this woman had captivated multiple husbands throughout her life. The casual touches that appear spontaneous but aren't quite random. Her fingers brushed Victoria's arm lightly, creating exactly the effect she described. Most importantly, you lean into each other's space, creating an invisible bubble that announces to everyone we belong together. Learning to love Lenore turned her sharp attention back to her grandson. Try again, Damien. And this time pretend you actually enjoy Victoria's company. With barely perceptible reluctance, Damien approached Victoria. He took her hand, consciously loosening his typically firm grip. Victoria felt unexpectedly nervous as he turned toward her, those penetrating gray eyes focusing entirely on her. Face like this, he asked, his voice dropping to a warmer register. The transformation was subtle, but startling. His rigid posture softened, shoulders relaxing as he leaned closer. The perpetual tension between his brows smoothed away, and something that might actually qualify as a smile touched the corners of his mouth. Most unsettling of all, his thumb began tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. It's much better. Eleanor approved, her experienced eyes missing nothing. Now attempt a genuine compliment. Something personal, not a performance evaluation. Damien hesitated, and Victoria braced herself for some awkward comment about her punctuality or organizational efficiency. Instead, he surprised her completely. Your eyes change color depending on the lighting, he said quietly, maintaining unwavering eye contact. Right now they're golden amber, but yesterday evening they appeared almost bronze. Victoria blinked, genuinely startled. You noticed that? I notice everything about you. He replied with such conviction that Victoria momentarily forgot they were acting. The gala. Performance Saturday evening's charity gala represented their official debut as Manhattan's newest power couple. Victoria had spent the afternoon with Celeste. Renowned stylist Eleanor had insisted upon selecting an elegant midnight blue gown that complemented her complexion while announcing her, someone worthy of standing beside Damien Cross. As they entered the glittering ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, Victoria felt the weight of hundreds of curious gazes. Damien's hand rested possessively on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd with practiced ease. Breathe, he murmured close to her ear, his breath warm against her skin. You look absolutely stunning. The compliment sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Though she reminded herself this was all part of their performance. They moved through the evening like seasoned partners. Damien introducing her to business associates and society figures with genuine pride in his voice. Victoria found herself laughing at his surprisingly dry humor and appreciating the subtle ways he protected her from the more aggressive social climbers, who circled them like sharks. You're quite good at this, she whispered as they swayed together during a slow dance. At what? Damien asked, his hand firm and warm against her back. Acting like you care about me? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Something flickered across his expression too quickly for her to interpret. Perhaps I'm not acting as much as you think? Growing complications the following weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of carefully orchestrated public appearances. Museum galas, theater premieres, intimate dinners with Eleanor's influential friends. Each event required them to play their roles more convincingly. Victoria began to notice disturbing changes in herself. She found herself looking forward to Damien's calls. Even the mundane scheduling conversations. His rare smiles became precious victories she secretly treasured. The way he listened when she spoke about her community center project with genuine interest made her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with their contract. More troubling. Still, she caught herself studying his profile during quiet moments, wondering what thoughts moved behind those analytical gray eyes. When he absently traced patterns on her hand during dinner conversations, she had to remind herself it was all pretense. The revelation dinner 1 month into their arrangement, Damien invited Victoria to dinner at his penthouse apartment. She'd expected another strategy session about upcoming events, but instead found herself in his private kitchen, watching him cook with the same methodical precision he applied to everything else. You cook? She asked, genuinely surprised. Efficiency, he replied, expertly julienning vegetables. Restaurant meals involve unnecessary variables. Timing, service quality, other patrons. This ensures optimal nutrition and environment control. Victoria laughed despite herself. Do you ever do anything spontaneous? Damien paused in his chopping, considering the question seriously. Spontaneity introduces chaos into carefully planned systems. But chaos can be wonderful sometimes, Victoria said, moving closer to watch his technique. Like unexpected conversations, or getting caught in the rain, or discovering something new about someone you thought you understood. Their eyes met across the marble countertop, and Victoria felt that familiar electric tension crackling between them. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, and realized with startling clarity that she wanted him to. Instead, Damien cleared his throat and returned to his vegetables. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. The board meeting crisis there. Carefully constructed world came crashing down on a Tuesday morning when Damien's assistant delivered an urgent message during their breakfast meeting at Eleanor's penthouse. The board has called an emergency session, Damien announced grimly after reading the communication. They're demanding verification of succession plans within 2 weeks. Eleanor's face darkened with understanding. Julian's work? No doubt. Julian Cross, Damien's ambitious cousin, had been circling like a vulture since Eleanor's diagnosis became public knowledge. Verification of what exactly? Victoria asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Proof of pregnancy, Damien replied flatly. With genetic confirmation that the child is a cross-descendant. Victoria nearly choked on her coffee. They can't demand that. It's invasive and probably illegal. Unfortunately, the company bylaws grant the board authority to verify succession claims when significant assets are involved, Eleanor explained wearily. Julian has convinced them that you two are manufacturing this relationship without serious intent to produce an heir, which is exactly what we're doing, Victoria pointed out. Yes, but we weren't supposed to be discovered, Damien said, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair in a rare display of frustration. The impossible choice that evening. Victoria found herself pacing Damien's study while he worked at his computer, both of them avoiding the conversation they needed to. We have 3 options, Damien finally said, closing his laptop with decisive finality. I'm listening. We terminate our arrangement immediately. I tell Eleanor the truth, and Julian assumes control when she passes. Victoria's heart clenched at the thought of disappointing Eleanor, who had grown genuinely excited about their relationship. What else? We proceed with the original surrogacy plan. Absolutely not, Victoria said immediately. Not having a baby to outmaneuver your cousin. Or, Damien continued quietly, we tell everyone the truth about our arrangement, but explain that our feelings have evolved beyond the original contract terms. Victoria stopped pacing, her heart hammering against her ribs. Have they evolved, I mean? Damien stood slowly, moving toward her with careful deliberation. I find myself unable to approach this situation with my usual analytical clarity. My thought processes have become compromised. Compromised how? He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes. When you laugh, I forget important meetings. When you challenge my opinions, I question beliefs I've held for years. When you touch my hand, even for our pretense, I lose track of time entirely. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. Damien ... I've spent my entire life avoiding emotional complications because they seemed inefficient and unpredictable. He continued, his voice growing softer. What I failed to calculate was the cost of that efficiency. Life perfectly ordered, but never truly lived. Truth revealed, you've shown me what I've been missing. Damien said, reaching up to touch her cheek with surprising gentleness. Not just theoretically, but in reality. Morning conversations over coffee, laughter during dinner, the way you fight passionately for things that matter to you. Victoria leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. This wasn't supposed to happen? No, he agreed. It wasn't. But I find I don't regret the deviation from our original plan. When Victoria opened her eyes, she found him watching her with an expression of such vulnerable honesty that it took her breath away. What are you saying, Damien? I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you, Victoria Sterling, completely illogically and irreversibly in love with you. Instead of responding with words, Victoria reached up and kissed him. Electric. Months of suppressed attraction and growing affection, crystallizing into perfect clarity. Damien responded immediately, his arms encircling her as if she were precious and fragile and essential all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, Victoria rested her forehead against his. I love you too, she whispered. I've been trying not to admit it for weeks, but I love you, Damien Cross. All of you. Even the parts that drive me absolutely crazy. The mahogany-paneled boardroom of Cross Industries fell silent as Damien finished his carefully prepared statement. 12 pairs of eyes stared at him with varying degrees of shock and outrage, while Julian's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. Let me understand this correctly, Julian sputtered, his composure finally cracking. Psst. You admit to fabricating? A relationship to satisfy grandmother's conditions, but now claim it's become genuine. Yet you refuse to provide the required heir verification within our specified time frame. That's correct, Damien confirmed calmly, his hands steady and reassuring over Victoria's beneath the polished table. This is preposterous, Julian exploded, rising from his chair. He's obviously still manipulating the situation for personal gain. Actually, a familiar voice interrupted from the doorway. I believe he's finally stopped manipulating the situation entirely.
Ellie.
Every head turned to see Eleanor Cross, entering the room with determined grace, moving slowly but purposefully. Despite her failing health, her private nurse hovered anxiously behind her, clearly disapproving of this unexpected excursion. "Grandmother," Damien rose immediately, concern evident in his voice. "You shouldn't be here. Your doctor specifically said, 'My doctors can.'" "Wait," Eleanor cut him off with characteristic authority. "This discussion is far more important than their tedious medical protocols." She surveyed the room with sharp eyes that belied her frail appearance, her gaze lingering on each board member before settling on Julian with obvious distaste. "Eleanor's wisdom? I've heard everything," Eleanor announced, without preamble. "Did you honestly believe I wouldn't have this room monitored after Julian's previous attempt to undermine company leadership?" Despite the tension, Victoria had to suppress a smile. The apple clearly hadn't fallen far from the tree when it came to cross-family strategic thinking. Eleanor made her way to the head of the table with deliberate authority, fixing Julian with a withering stare that could have frozen boiling water. "For you, nephew," she said with cutting precision, "your transparent attempts to seize control have grown tiresome beyond description." "I'm simply enforcing the succession conditions you yourself established," Julian protested, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "The conditions were a test," Eleanor snapped, her voice carrying the steel that had built an empire. "Not of reproductive capability, you fool, but of character development." Murmur rippled through the assembled board members as Eleanor turned, her attention to Damien and Victoria, her expression softening perceptibly. "I suspected from the beginning that your relationship was arranged," she told them with surprising gentleness. "The timing was far too convenient. Damien has never shown genuine interest in any woman beyond superficial social functions." "New?" Damien asked, genuine shock coloring his usually controlled voice. "I raised you, dear boy. I know the difference between your calculated behavior and sincere emotion." Eleanor's stern expression melted into something approaching tenderness. "What I didn't anticipate was watching you fall genuinely in love for the first time in your life." The new arrangement, Victoria felt warmth rise to her cheeks as Eleanor's knowing gaze turned to her with obvious approval. "And you, my dear Victoria, have accomplished what I thought impossible. You've taught my grandson that some things cannot be controlled, scheduled, or contained within legal documents." "He was always capable of more than he believed," Victoria replied softly, squeezing Damien's hand. "He just needed someone to believe in him." Eleanor nodded with deep satisfaction before addressing the board with renewed authority. "As for the succession question, I am hereby amending all previous conditions. Damien will retain complete control of Cross Industries with no further stipulations regarding marriage timelines or heir production. You cannot simply change established agreements," Julian protested desperately. "I can do whatever I choose," Eleanor replied with icy finality. "I still maintain controlling interest in this company, as you know perfectly well." She paused for effect, clearly enjoying Julian's growing panic. "Furthermore, I am establishing a new division within Cross Industries, the Community Development Initiative, to be directed by Victoria Sterling should she choose to accept the position." Victoria's mouth fell open in complete surprise. "Mrs. Cross, that's incredibly generous, but you've proven your value not just to my grandson, but to this entire organization," Eleanor said firmly. "The Brooklyn Heights Community Center is merely the beginning of what you could accomplish with proper resources behind your vision." 6 months later, the adoption agency waiting room buzzed with quiet activity as Victoria and Damien sat side by side, both radiating nervous energy despite their attempts at composure. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Damien asked for the third time in 10 minutes, his knee bouncing with uncharacteristic anxiety. The statistical success rates for first-time adoptions involve numerous variables, and we should consider if you quote adoption statistics at me one more time. "I'm going to scream," Victoria warned, though her smile took any sting from the words. "Yes, I'm certain. We're certain. Now, please try to relax before you wear a hole in the carpet." Damien attempted to still his restless movement, though his hands continued to fidget with his perfectly pressed sleeves. "I've reorganized my entire schedule for the next 18 months. The nursery renovations are complete according to all safety specifications. I've researched every pediatrician within a 50-mile radius and compiled their credentials, success rates, and patient satisfaction scores. Of course you have, Victoria said with deep affection, capturing one of his restless hands in both of hers. And that's exactly why you're going to be an amazing father. Miss Sterling, Mr. Cross? A warm voice interrupted their conversation as the social worker appeared in the doorway, smiling broadly. She's ready to meet you both now. Meeting Emma, they followed Ms. Rodriguez down a cheerfully decorated hallway lined with children's artwork and motivational posters. The playroom at the end buzzed with quiet activity, but Victoria's attention immediately focused on a dark-haired little girl of approximately 5 who sat apart from the others, methodically organizing blocks into precise color-coordinated towers. She looked up as they entered, her serious brown eyes assessing them with an intensity that reminded Victoria startlingly of Damien. Emma, Ms. Rodriguez said gently, kneeling beside the child. These are the people I told you about, Ms. Sterling and Mr. Cross. Hello, Emma, Victoria said, carefully kneeling to match the child's eye level. That's a beautiful tower you're building. Emma studied them both for a long moment before selecting a red block and offering it to Damien with grave seriousness. This goes on top, she instructed with the authority of someone who knew exactly how things should be arranged. But you have to be very careful. To Victoria's delight, Damien immediately knelt beside them, accepting the block with equal solemnity. Thank you for trusting me with such an important piece, he said, placing it carefully according to her specifications. Is this the correct position? Emma considered his work critically before nodding approval. You did it exactly right. She turned to Victoria with slightly less wariness. Can you do the green block next? I'd be honored, Victoria replied, accepting the green block with appropriate reverence. Building a family as they worked together on Emma's architectural project. The little girl gradually warmed to them, explaining her organizational system, with a precision that made Damien's eyes light up with recognition and delight. The colors have to go in spectrum order, Emma explained seriously, but the sizes need to create structural stability. See? It's both pretty and strong. That's excellent engineering thinking, Damien told her with genuine admiration. You've considered both aesthetic appeal and functional requirements? Emma beamed at the praise, and Victoria felt her heart melt. Completely. When the visit time ended, and they prepared to leave with promises to return the following day, Emma tugged gently on Damien's jacket sleeve. Will you help me build an even bigger tower tomorrow? She asked, her voice small but hopeful. Damien knelt once more, meeting her earnest gaze with gentle sincerity. I promise I'll help you build whatever you want to create, and I always keep my promises. 1 year later, the Cross family estate buzzed with joyful chaos as Emma's 6th birthday party reached its peak energy. Children raced through the manicured gardens, while adults clustered in small groups. Watching the festivities with indulgent smiles, Victoria stood on the terrace, observing Damien as he helped Emma organize an elaborate treasure hunt with the same meticulous attention to detail. He brought $2 billion business deals. The sight never failed to amaze her. He's completely transformed. Eleanor's voice came from beside her. Despite her continued health challenges, she'd insisted on attending every important family milestone. We all have, Victoria replied unconsciously, touching the simple but elegant engagement ring that now adorned her left hand. I never imagined when I signed that ridiculous contract that I'd end up with everything I'd ever wanted. Sometimes the most beautiful destinations are reached by the most unexpected paths. Eleanor observed with the wisdom of her many years. Emma's delighted laughter drew their attention back to the treasure hunt, where she'd apparently discovered the final clue hidden beneath Damien's meticulously planned route. Did I do it right, Daddy? Emma called out, using the title that still made Damien's face light up with wonder every time he heard it. Perfectly, he called back, sweeping her into his arms for a celebratory hug. You followed every clue exactly as intended. As Victoria watched her husband and daughter together, both of them beaming with pure happiness, she marveled at how profoundly their lives had changed. What had begun as a cold business arrangement had blossomed into the warmest, most genuine love she'd ever known. The perfect ending that evening. After Emma had fallen asleep surrounded by her new birthday treasures, Victoria found Damien in his study. Instead of working late as he once would have, He was carefully organizing Emma's artwork into a special album he'd created to preserve her creative development. "Any regrets?" Vittoria asked, settling into his lap with the easy affection that had replaced their initial awkwardness. Damien pulled her closer, pressing a soft kiss to her temple as he considered the question seriously. "Not a single one," he said finally, his voice rich with contentment. "Though I must admit, our current situation deviates significantly from my original business plan." Victoria laughed, the sound warm and bright in the quiet room. "Your original business plan was terrible. This is so much better." "Agreed," Damien said, tightening his arms around her. "I calculated every variable in my life except you, Victoria Cross. You were the unexpected factor that transformed all my equations completely." "Is that your way of saying you love me?" Victoria teased, though her heart still fluttered at his romantic declarations. Damien replied with a smile that had once been reserved only for successful business deals but now appeared regularly throughout their daily life. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promises for all the beautiful tomorrows that lay ahead of them. Outside, the city sparkled with a million lights, but inside their home, surrounded by love and laughter and the beautiful chaos of family life, Victoria knew they had found something infinitely more precious than any contract could have provided. Their love story had begun with careful calculations and legal documents, but it had bloomed into something wonderfully unpredictable and absolutely perfect. And as Emma's gentle breathing drifted from the room down the hall, Victoria smiled against Damien's lips, knowing that some of life's most beautiful gifts came wrapped in the most unexpected packages.